Onsu looked at Rikusen with an expression that was hard to describe. He seemed to be wondering whose side Rikusen was on. Onsu should have understood to whom Rikusen's present position made him beholden, between his current boss and his former boss. Lakan, meanwhile, munched on some fried food, seemingly indifferent to the situation. The food first passed through the hands of a lady-in-waiting Rikusen didn't recognize. She left only the merest scraps for Lakan's consumption. Rikusen might have assumed she was his food taster, but if so, she was keeping most of the meal for herself. Lakan simply got her leftovers. He'd heard the imperial younger brother would be coming to the city, but at the moment he didn't see him. This didn't seem to be a public banquet. Lakan had probably accepted the invitation without thinking anything of it, but Onsu's brimming eyes made it clear that he was supposed to have politely refused. Ahem, Rikusen, I want to eat that one bun, Lakan said. At first Rikusen had been sure Lakan had forgotten his name, but that wasn't true. As for that one bun, he added, Onsu says he doesn't know which bun I mean, but I told him. That bun, Rikusen agreed with Onsu. That wasn't enough to go on. Was that why Lakan had called him over, because he wanted a snack bun? Rikusen searched his memory. You're talking about something sweet, yes sir. Of course I am. Does it have any filling? I don't think so. So it wasn't a red bean filling that made this bun sweet. Is it covered in sauce, or do you dip it in anything? Ah, the sauce, yes, there was a sauce, that white stuff, I love it. Rikusen finally connected the dots. Master Lakan, are you talking about the fried buns from the Liuliu Fandian? The name meant the 66 restaurant. It was a place Lakan had gone once, and several times after that he'd sent Rikusen to buy the buns. Sir Onsu. Fry up a mandarin roll, then top it with sweetened condensed milk, he said. I'm on it. There was a mandarin roll already in front of Lakan. That must have been what put him in mind of the Liuliu's creation. Fried bread with condensed milk sounds tasty, said the woman who appeared to be Lakan's food taster, her eyes sparkling. She didn't seem much like your ordinary lady-in-waiting. She was another of Lakan's finds, perhaps. Miss Chu, perhaps you'd be so kind as to taste slightly less of the food for poison, Onsu said. So her name was Chu. Onsu's touch of deference suggested she wasn't Lakan's lady-in-waiting so much as someone who had been borrowed from elsewhere to fill this role. Oops, my bad, Chu said. If nothing else, this conversation proved to Rikusen that Lakan was still Lakan. I can have the rolls prepared for your snack tomorrow, sir, Onsu said. I want them for dinner tonight. Please, sir, be reasonable. We're already at a banquet. Onsu's voice came out in a squeak. He didn't seem able to muster much more. Rikusen watched Onsu with sympathy, knowing how demanding Lakan could be when he was in a mood. Onsu gave Rikusen a dirty look. I see some things never change, Rikusen said to Onsu, trying to improve his mood. Indeed they don't, and you seem to have made yourself quite at home here in the West. Onsu had noticed Rikusen's suntan and smelled the incense wafting from him. Rikusen hadn't been the kind to wear incense back in the capital. He only did it here to cover the smell of sweat, but he refrained from saying so. He thought it would sound like an excuse. You'll have to pardon Rikusen. He's only just gotten back from a long trip, said Jyaku-o as he took a bite of meat. He evidently had been listening to their conversation. Oh, I see, Onsu said, paling to be so suddenly addressed by Jyaku-o himself. He hadn't expected the great man's conversation to turn to him. Is the food to your liking? If there is anything you want, I can have my chef prepare it immediately. You know the fried dough at the Liuliu Fandian? Lakan, never one to need asking twice, broke in. The people of the western capital would not, of course, know the fried bread of the royal city. Ho! Please tell me about it, Jyaku-o said. Now that he had expressed a willingness to listen, it would be Rikusen's job to explain. He felt butterflies flutter in his stomach. This seemed likely to be his lot for the foreseeable future, not a happy prospect for the ever-anxious Rikusen. Chapter 3, The Annex and the Forgotten Man. Jyaku-o's annex seemed like quite a comfortable place to be thanks to its abundance of greenery. When one thought of Ise province, where the western capital was located, one thought of the desert. But in fact there were many grassy plains. It was dry, yes, but there was more here than sand. There was enough water for herbaceous plants at least to grow. Water was certainly precious here. Was that the main house they stayed in last time? Maomao wondered. There had been lots of green there too. Just having all those trees in the mansion's garden was enough to give the impression of wealth. Of course, the people of the capital who were used to living by the great river, with the sea not so far away, might have thought it lacked something. But it was enough to be refreshing. The garden here was done roughly in the style of the central region, but it was full of plants she had never seen before. Her first thought was that she would love to test their medicinal effects, but well, that was just Maomao being Maomao. Young lady, let's set our luggage down first. It's been such a long trip, and I'm so very tired, the quack said, looking as run down as he sounded. Good idea, said Tianyu. Hey, Nyingyang, once we get to our room, maybe we can play rock, paper, scissors to see who gets to explore the mansion. Lihaku walked a few paces behind the three of them, keeping watch. The medical office was in a separate building from the mansion. They could not exactly complain about the location. Sickness was considered an impurity after all. If the office was anywhere too well traveled, they would only have to worry about infection every time a patient showed up. This is one odd place, the quack said, looking at their building mystified. I thought the same thing at the administrative building's medical office. It certainly was not what they were used to in Li. While the Western capital had its own architectural style, the building did not really seem to belong to that either. It almost looked like, is this a chapel? Tianyu asked, his hand brushing the bricks. Chapel, what's that? The quack asked. No wonder he did not know the word. There were not many chapels in Li, and the quack was hardly what you would call cosmopolitan. Think of it like a shrine, Maomao offered. Oh, a place to pray. Yeah. There are a lot of different religions in this city, Tianyu said. They entered the building to find a high vaulted room. There didn't appear to be any objects of worship inside. The only vestiges of any faith once practiced here were some decorations on the walls. Perhaps a pious person had once lived here. When the place passed into Jiakuo's hands, he stopped short of tearing it down. However, it was no longer a place of worship. It's the perfect size. Oh, and look, the rest of our belongings have already arrived. There really is quite a lot. It's going to be a job organizing everything. Suppose we just leave them in the boxes, the quack said. Good point. Let's hurry up and play rock, paper, scissors. Who gets to go exploring? Not long ago, Maomao would have eagerly accepted Tianyu's suggestion. Careful thought, though, left her with a question. Even if she won the game, would the other two actually do their work here? At the same time, she knew she would be annoyed if Tianyu won. And if the quack doctor earned the chance to go exploring, well, that thought was a little nerve-wracking too. In the end, Maomao took the most boring solution. She rolled up her sleeves, tied a handkerchief over her mouth and said, right, exploring comes later. First we need to get this stuff sorted. Or you seemed all excited to look around earlier. I'm so very tired from our trip, young lady. Can't we take things slower? No, we can't, Maomao said, rebuffing them both. Their medical supplies could have rotted during the long sea voyage. They needed to know what was still usable and what wasn't, so that they could stock up on anything they needed. No one leaves this room until we get all of this organized. Oh no, the quack stuck out his lower lip and looked deeply dejected. Tianyu didn't look happy about it, but he shuffled over to the supplies and started working. What would you like me to do, young lady? Asked the big mutt Lihaku. He looked like he might just drop to the floor and start doing push-ups to pass the time if she didn't have anything for him to do, so she decided to put him to physical labor. Could you get the box by the door and bring it here? Maomao asked. Sure thing, oof, this is heavy. It turned out to be a bit much even for Lihaku. Maomao went over to the box, opened the lid and peeked in. It was packed with rice husks and sweet potatoes. No wonder it was so heavy. Even Lihaku would not be able to lift it by himself. I don't think this is ours, she said. What do you think? Should we borrow a cart and haul this somewhere? Lihaku asked. No, I think we can just let someone in charge know and they can deal with it, Maomao replied, pondering whom they should tell. At just that moment, someone came from the direction of the garden, waving urgently. I think some of my cargo got mixed in with yours, the newcomer called. He was a man with no particular distinguishing characteristics. The only thing notable about him was how unnotable he was. He had unobjectionable looks and was probably 23 or 24 years old. I feel like I've seen him somewhere before, Maomao thought, pondering further. When the newcomer saw Maomao, he stopped short. It's you, he said, pointing dramatically at her. The one who might be Lahan's sister or might not, I can't tell. The answer is not. Now she was sure she'd had this conversation before, but who is this guy? Her eyes drifted to the box full of sweet potatoes. The mention of Lahan's name sparked a memory. You are Lahan's brother, aren't you? Her memory of him was hazy, but she thought that was who he was. Lahan is younger than me. Why should I have to be defined in terms of him? Yes, this was Lahan's brother, with his delectable reactions. She had met him before and remembered him mostly for being very normal and offering copious chances for witty interjections. His face, though, that she had completely forgotten. Well, I do not know your name, she pointed out. My name is that was not an invitation. She had only just recently and finally remembered the quack doctor's name. She did not need to learn any more. Listen to me. Let me tell you my name. Maomao, however, was in no mood to listen. More importantly, what are you doing here? This guy normally spent all his time tending potato fields in the central region. Lahan's brother looked scandalized by Maomao's question. Lihaku, having decided he wasn't a threat, looked on quietly. I'm here because they dragged me here. They brought me instead of my father with orders to teach the people of the western capital how to grow these things. Maomao sensed some resentment. These things referred to the sweet potatoes. I take it Lahan duped you into doing this. He did not. Lahan's brother was nothing if not easy to read, and Lahan remained his usual ruthless self. Why didn't he ask his father? Maomao asked. Lahan's father, Lara something or other, loved farming and seemed like he would go to the ends of the earth if there was a field to be tended there. Lahan's brother paused. After his experiment with growing sweet potatoes in the north came to light, he can't get away. Experiment. Sweet potatoes yield several times more than a rice crop, so he thought they would be perfect for Shihoku province, where there's plenty of people and space. Right. Jinchi had been trying everything she could to shore up the food supply, and she seemed to recall Lahan being very bullish on potatoes as well. The problem is, sweet potatoes come from the south, so they don't grow well in the north. I doubt they will grow at all, but Dad says it is worth trying to figure out what the northern limit is, so I just let him do that. I'm not sure this is the time. Even Maomao could tell that this was a dangerous idea. A famine was looming. They could not spare people and land to satisfy one farmer's curiosity, and he had such a pleasant look. The man had reminded her of Liumen, and evidently when something interested him, he became completely absorbed in it to the exclusion of everything else. It would be too risky for all the fields to be sweet potatoes, so I brought these too. Have a look. Lahan's brother tossed her something from the box next to the crate of sweet potatoes. Regular potatoes. This is a white potato, right? It was a big, stout, round potato. Potatoes were a relatively new foodstuff. The matron of the verdigris house had told Maomao that they were not yet widely eaten when she was young. That's right. A tuber like this can grow even in the cold, and even if the ground isn't very fertile, so he made me bring these along. Lahan only knows nice Dad, but he can be a pretty formidable character when he wants to. Lahan's father, La something or other by name, was evidently a bona fide member of the La clan. Even Maomao had nearly been taken in by his pleasant countenance. Potatoes can be harvested twice a year, so my father has been hell-bent on planting them. I'm afraid he might be trying to use them to fudge his harvest numbers. You seem to know a lot about potatoes, Maomao observed. She'd taken Lahan's brother to be a completely average person with no special qualities other than his vulnerability to a good quip, but it turned out he did have something to offer. Wow, you're a regular farmer, Lihaku said, clapping Lahan's brother on the back. He hadn't followed the entire conversation, but he was impressed just the same. Farmer, Lahan's brother choked. He seemed to want to argue, but he was too enraged to say anything more. The quack doctor, apparently intimidated by Lahan's brother's fury, kept his distance. Tianyu seemed to judge the man as simply too normal to be interesting. So your point is these potatoes aren't food, they're seed crops, Maomao said. Yes, they are. I'm supposed to show the people how to raise them. Him and my older brother can't spend his whole life tied to one place. How is one field so different from another anyway? In short, this normal person had demonstrated a normal interest in the outside world and been duped for it. The fact that he had chased down this crate of seed potatoes, though, showed that he was indeed a dedicated farmer. Maomao suspected he would produce a lovely crop, even if he complained the whole time. Teaching them to grow new crops, that presumably meant Lahan's brother would be spending his time out in the farming villages. When you go out to the villages, take me with you, Maomao said. Why would I do that? There's something I want to investigate. This was a gift from above. She had assumed she would have to ask Rikusen or someone until Lahan's brother came along. I saw Rikusen's outfit. The mud-streaked clothes suggested he had been inspecting a farm somewhere. But what was a man sent all the way from the capital doing, relegated to the fringes of his new home? Maybe he was checking the harvests to make sure no one was cheating on their taxes, or maybe he knows about the insect plague. A plague of insects had struck west of the royal capital, which meant there was a good chance the locusts had come from farther west than that. It would always be easier to deal with a swarm of locusts when there weren't as many of them. I'm not all that interested in bugs, but I don't think I can get out of this one. For a second, Maomao found herself thinking of another young woman, one who had liked insects far more than she did. Of course, I'm trusting myself to your services today, Master Physician. As ever, Jinchi smiled as he received them. They were in the most sumptuous guest room in the annex. There was a rich, thick, delicately embroidered sheep's wool rug. The curtains appeared to be made of silk. They shimmered and shone each time the wind ruffled them. Maomao could never help wondering about the market value of Jinchi's accommodations. That looks good, she thought, spying a plate of fruit on the table. There were luscious grapes, so recently chilled that they were still sweating. They promised sweet juice, filling the mouth as they burst between the teeth. She wondered if he needed them checked for poison. Sadly, Maomao wasn't there at that moment to taste Jinchi's food. That job fell to Jinchi's lady-in-waiting Taomei. The boisterous Chu was missing today, and Maomao didn't see Baryu either. She had her suspicions about what was on the other side of the gently rustling curtains. Suhan and Gaeshun stood by the wall. The quack doctor remained cowed in Jinchi's presence. "Eep, let's get started then." As usual, he could barely get the words out, and as usual his exam was pro forma at best. Tianyu was also absent from this scene. He had proved too likely to offend someone important to be invited on a visit like this. Tianyu was perceptive enough that he might have looked askance at Maomao and the quack going to do this exam, but if he had any doubts, he had kept them to himself for the moment. Was that because he knew how to take a hint, or had someone on Jinchi's side of things reached out to help him understand? Maomao preferred not to think about it. She didn't care either way. She had things to do. For now, she would put aside the question of why Jinchi had been consigned to the villa. The freak strategist wasn't in the same building, and that was what really mattered. "All right, young lady, I'll be heading back," the quack said. "Yes, sir," Maomao replied. The quack left without so much as a scruple. His bodyguard Lihaku went with him. Jinchi turned down the sparkle just a bit. "Tea if you would," he said. "Of course, sir," replied Taomei and went to prepare it. "Here you go." Suhan thoughtfully brought a chair, so Maomao sat down. She wasn't rude enough to grab any grapes just then, but she tried to send Suhan a telepathic message that she'd like some as a souvenir. "How are you settling into your new workplace?" Jinchi asked. "Easily enough, sir. The personnel haven't changed, so it's just getting used to the new environment." That was the honest answer. What she really wanted now was to find out what kinds of medicine were available in the Western capital. When they had taken stock of what had been used during the ship voyage, it turned out to be chiefly nausea medication and antipyretics. The southern route they had taken had been as hot as high summer, and combined with the poor air circulation on the ship, they had lots of cases of dizziness. Heat stroke was best cured by water, not medicine, but Maomao suspected that while she was away, the quack had diagnosed many cases as colds and handed out antipyretics. That would explain it. It was funny enough that the medicine the quack prescribed tasted so bad. Patients had to take it with plenty of water anyway, and in the end it cured their heat stroke. He sure got luck on his side, she marveled. Even better, she'd heard they would be given new supplies bought in the Western capital to make up for the shortfall in their inventory. Wish I could have gone along on the shopping trip, though. She was so curious about exactly what drugs were sold here. Maomao, however, had other things to attend to. She glanced around, then stole a look at Jinchi's side. She wasn't sure how to bring it up, so she settled on changing the subject entirely. "I gather we have a potato farmer among us, thanks to Lahan's connections." This was Lahan they were talking about. If they succeeded in cultivating potatoes in Isei province, she was sure he intended to go straight into exporting them to Shea or something. It was right next door to Isei, which would minimize shipping costs. Jinchi gave her a look. "A potato farmer, he's your cousin is what I heard." "No relation," she said firmly, so there would be no mistake. "But I heard he was Lahan's older brother." "Yes, but Lahan and I are complete strangers." Jinchi gave her a harder look, but he went along with it. "Anyway, yes, we do have a potato farmer here. When I heard he was from the La clan, I expected someone I don't know, more distinctive." "Have you met him, sir?" "I've only seen him in passing. I saw him when Lahan was helping him onto the ship." In other words, he had spotted them smack in the middle of the dupe. "He's a very normal person, sir." "Yes, very normal." It seemed Jinchi shared Maomao's assessment, but anyway, if he already knew about him, that made everything easier. "I'd like to accompany him to the farming villages." "Do you think I could be given permission?" "The farming villages would help me if you could go, but then how would you handle your medical duties?" Jinchi patted his flank pointedly. "You did that to yourself," Maomao thought. He already knew how to change the dressings anyway, so she didn't have to be examining it all the time. "A young man named Tianyu has been assigned to our group. I think he could manage things, sir, she said, ignoring Jinchi's injury for the moment. She might object to Tianyu as a person, but his actual work seemed trustworthy. Very well, Jinchi sounded like he had to swallow some objection, but agreed nonetheless. I was already planning to have someone get a first-hand look at the farms. There were enough issues with the villages regarding the impending plague. This might be perfect. What kind of issues? Maomao cocked her head. Jinchi had so many different problems to deal with, she didn't even know which one he meant. Jinchi looked to Gaeshun, and the other man unrolled a map of Isei province on the table.